Good evening, and welcome to Money Matters. My name is Kimon Hatza, and I'm a business attorney in Radnor, Pennsylvania. I focus my practice in the areas of life sciences, healthcare, and information technology. Tonight, we're continuing our special series on life sciences and technology leaders in the Delaware Valley. Before we get started, I want to remind our viewers that from time to time, financial issues relating to life sciences, healthcare, or information technology matters or companies may be discussed on the show. These discussions are not and should not be viewed as financial advice. Moreover, since the program is pre-recorded and shown at a later date, please keep in mind that the information may no longer be current. You should always check with your financial advisor before entering into any financial transaction. It is with great pleasure that I introduce my co-host this evening, Charlie Huntington. Charlie is the co-founder and a board member of BioStrategy Partners, a tax-exempt organization that helps life sciences entrepreneurs with their pre-seed companies. Charlie, thanks for co-hosting.
It's a pleasure, Kimon. Thank you.
Sure.
Tonight, I wanted to talk about healthcare IT with you, and this is something that is rapidly evolving in the world, but it's also rapidly evolving locally here. Wondered if you could comment on some of the trends that you've seen in healthcare IT.
Sure, I'd be happy to. I think I probably mentioned on a number of previous shows now how the increased activity I've seen in healthcare IT, and how, frankly, over the past year and a half, I think I've seen more healthcare IT matters than anything else in the healthcare or life sciences.
It seems to be what's getting funded.
Yeah, it does. Absolutely does. And I was looking, it's funny you should say that, because this time of year I'm always looking at reports and from, the recently concluded year and things like that, just to keep an eye on trends and activity and so forth. And I was looking at an article on venture capital investment nationally in health IT. And the article said that in 2012, there was $1.2 billion venture capital dollars invested in health IT in this country. And in 2013, it was up to $2 billion.
Wow.
So almost doubled, not quite, but really large numbers in either instance. I also gleaned from the same report that the anticipated growth in this industry from 2013 through 2017 is expected to be roughly about 22% per year. So we're talking about real growth and real opportunity for folks that are interested in this space or already in it. A lot of that is, as a result of recent legislation that has either incentivized or mandated certain things in the healthcare industry, including the move to electronic health records, which is, I think, a big piece of this. And I think the thought was that IT hardware would dominate the market, followed by IT services and IT software. And we'll see how that plays out, but that was sort of what was anticipated. Fortunately for us tonight, we have a guest who's in the industry, who could probably, and who knows a lot more than either of us, I guess, and we'll be able to give some additional insights into what's going on in the market.
Thanks for your thoughts.
Sure, appreciate it. Before we introduce our special guest, I do want to remind our viewers that if you have a question that you would like us to answer on a future show, please feel free to send that question to Money Matters TV, 205 East Levering Mill Road in Ballackinwood, Pennsylvania, 19004, or alternatively, email that question to moneymatterstv@gmail.com. It's now with great pleasure that I introduce our special guest this evening, Phil Heifetz. Phil is the president and CEO of EyeIC, a health IT company that was spun out of the University of Pennsylvania. Prior to becoming EyeIC's CEO, Phil headed the finance and business development functions for Othera, a specialty pharmaceutical company based in Exton, Pennsylvania. Othera raised over $50 million of venture funding and brought 2 novel eye drugs to clinical trials, eventually selling those off in a series of transactions. He also held a similar position with PlantGenix, an ag biotech startup company, In addition, he served as a technology licensing officer for the University of Pennsylvania. Phil has a bachelor's in chemistry from Georgetown University and has earned his MBA from Wharton with a concentration in healthcare management. Along with Atul Shah, he co-founded Philadelphia Health IT Circle, or FIT Circle, a networking, education, and advocacy group for Philadelphia's digital health scene. Phil, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, guys.
Can you tell our viewers how you first got involved in life sciences and health IT?
Yeah, and thanks for kind of reciting my background because I think what you're hearing is somebody who does not come from the tech side. I'm not a techie. I don't come from the software world. So really coming out of the life sciences, as you mentioned. So spent time at University of Pennsylvania, really cutting my teeth and learning about the nuts and bolts of licensing and kind of the rudimentary pieces of business development, working with very early stage kinds of technologies and bringing those forward to the marketplace. Frankly, at a time where there was a little bit more action in the life sciences world, and then moved on, as you said, to the biotech startups that you mentioned as well, and ending up in the pharmaceutical space. So that was my life sciences progression, if you will, up to that point. And as you, I think, have noted here and in prior shows, there has been a change, I think, in the environment, not only for pharma, but especially in this region, and now this emergence of health IT, which we sometimes call it digital health because it's more than just the IT component, and that's really one of the things we'll talk about when we talk about the circle.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about EyeIC's business?
Absolutely, sure. So EyeIC actually comes out of University of Pennsylvania. There was a researcher there, Dr. Jeffrey Berger, was a retinal specialist who had a computer science background as well, and he developed this concept and this idea of basically taking images, medical images, and combining them in a way where you could view the changes that are often very subtle and often missed by a clinician or a patient. Present that as an animation, so those very subtle changes. If you think about Mickey Mouse in the old cartoons, his arm kind of moves. It's the same idea. You flip back and forth between two images. If there's been no change, they're static. But if there is a change, it's really evident to your eye, and your eye detects that. Dr. Berger tragically had passed away right after publishing all this and patenting it. But it was then acquired by the founder of EyeIC, who was a glaucoma specialist himself. He took this forward, really bootstrapped this up, got some funding eventually from Ben Franklin Technology Partners and a venture fund locally called Mentortech Ventures, and established the company. The technology eventually gained FDA clearance, and it was brought to market as a software.
Now, there's an awful lot of radiological type products on them. I mean, you have X-rays, you have CAT scans, you have MRIs. Does this technology, and this seems like it's sort of it works with those types of things if the animation that you're talking about and the otherwise, what does a doctor do? He puts like two X-rays up on a thing, and he looks at this one, and he looks at this one, and he tries to see the changes. So is this a technology that works with other types of imaging things out there to assist the clinician?
Yeah, I mean, so the initial use case really was around images that are taken for the eye, and that's because, again, the founder, where he came from. Right. And actually, about 10% of the time you go to the eye doctor, of anybody goes to the eye doctor, they'll take one of these images. So it's a very common procedure. Takes a second. It's quick. It's relatively inexpensive, and it's basically a digital photo that's produced. Turns out that's the same kind of thing that you're now beginning to see in dermatology, and it's a very serious problem in derm, being able to see an expansion or a change in a skin lesion. And I don't know about you, but when I go to the doctor, the dermatologist, they're asking me what's changed. Like, who knows? It's pretty hard to tell.
Sure.
Because you're talking once a year maybe, and he's pulling out his notebook and comparing his little hand-drawn symbols from a year ago. So you move from that to an image and being able to compare those. that's a much more
Yeah.
scientific way to do this, and it's much more intuitive to me as a patient. And so that same thing could apply. So those are a couple use cases. Most of our effort really has been in the eye. It's not to say that we couldn't apply this in some other areas, including MRIs and radiography. And that's to be seen. We haven't yet explored that.
Okay. How would you say that your prior work experience helped prepare you for your role as CEO of EyeIC?
And by the way, you're like the poster child of what this region would love. I mean, how many guests have we had, Kimon, where they will say, we educate the best, and they disappear, and they never work for Big Pharma around here, they never start companies around here, they're gone. So you are exactly what the region wants more of. So how do we replicate you? Exactly.
Well, thank you, and my family appreciates that comment too. So, essentially learning those tools of the trade, beginning, at Penn, and as you pointed out, a great institution where you can really learn a lot, and kind of transitioning from studies to actual practice, and then taking that out on the road and learning particularly how do you get money in, and then how do you get this company either acquired or somehow partnered, and those are really the two big skill sets that I'm bringing to this.
What would you say is the most challenging aspect of your duties, from day to day or month to month?
Yeah, well, it's really about trying to work with and change sometimes how these clinicians operate, and introducing a new technology, a new concept to them. This is why medicine is 10 years behind everybody else. I mean, the idea that we're bringing to the table of using the computer to analyze images, I mean, this is something they've been doing for a gazillion years in other industries. Right. So, that idea of moving medicine, and it's kind of, we'll dovetail into that discussion about medical records and how, where are we going with that, and why do we need this health IT circle, really has to do with the fact that medicine is very slow to come along.
So I know we've had some guests where their biggest challenges have been with the FDA, the regulatory agencies. Healthcare IT, and you could speak about this either as your company or more, we're going to drill down and ask you questions about the industry in general in a few minutes. But do you think in general healthcare IT interacts less with regulators just based on, I'm sure it's company specific, but what's been your experience? Do you have to get inside the machine with regulators, or are you able to, do you have the luxury of staying more 30,000 feet, and those it's not ancillary, but the MRIs and what Kimon had talked about, the different parts of the business, that's really where the FDA or somebody would drill down?
Well, it's very much of a moving target. You bring up a great point,
Yeah.
which is the FDA is just beginning to think about this, and how are they going to deal with it. I mean, when EyeIC was born, there weren't really all that many pieces of medical software out there. So it was fairly easy to fit this into the regime, if you will. We happen to provide a tool that clinicians are using directly to make medical decisions. We thought it was important at the time that we go through that process.
Okay.
And it wasn't very clearly spelled out, though, who is or isn't subject to that. What we're now seeing I mean, these new apps that are coming out, I mean, they're measuring all kinds of very important, metrics, heart rate, things like that, and doctors are using some of these to make clinical decisions. Not all of them are going through the FDA route, and that doesn't mean they shouldn't. It just means they haven't. And so there's a big question out there about what will be regulated, how will it be regulated, and I mean, things in front of Congress as we speak.
So what you're suggesting there is, if a young company, IT company, is not careful to put the proper procedures in place, the FDA, that it could become the kink in the chain very easily.
Oh yes,
where what they have is no longer saleable because it's now tainted because their process didn't include oversight where it should have.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I think this is a medical product, and you have to be cognizant of the regulatory aspect as well as in FDA kind of areas, as well as HIPAA, which is the privacy rules, and So if you're just starting out, these are two things you really have to navigate.
Right.
You got to be very careful.
But as you say, you really can't go back and put the toothpaste in the tube. So it's better if you're thinking, thinking now about, all right, what could be required in the future, and I'm going to engineer this into my procedures now so that I don't have to go back and backfill, and what I've done is no longer approved. So
I think what you're seeing out there is kind of a general rule of thumb is if your software is being used to make a clinical decision, you ought to think long and hard about that.
I don't know if you answered, I think Charlie may have asked this and you might not have answered it directly, but is the FDA process as cumbersome for an IT product as it is for a pharmaceutical?
That's a great question because I think they're still figuring this out.
Okay.
My initial answer would be not as much. I mean, it tends to fall, at least for us, falls in that device category, which is a lot lighter, for instance. But it really depends on the product, and that's really the crazy thing about FDA is you don't know how they're going to view it.
So you're a pioneer. You're a pioneer.
Exactly. I have the arrows in my back. Hopefully, hopefully not.
Well, it seems clear that not just the electronic record keeping, but the digitizing of healthcare certainly enhances the prospects of your company going forward. What would success at EyeIC look like to you?
Well, when I'm calling Charlie here for help managing my funds, we're good.
and we've had success.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Let's transition and talk a little bit about something that I know is near and dear to your heart, Phil, in addition to your company, and that is there have been a few regions around the country which have popped up through a lot of hard work as go-to areas for healthcare IT. Philadelphia, thanks to your hard work and thanks to Atul Shah's hard work,
Absolutely.
is becoming one of those. I mean, we're looked at now as a vibrant healthcare IT spot to locate a company. Can you talk a little bit? I know you all have a group called Philadelphia Health IT Circle that Atul and you have developed. Can you talk a little bit about who are the organization's members? Maybe we can start with that.
Sure, absolutely. And this goes back to your comment about sort of the region and what are the strengths of the region. And healthcare, what do you need? I mean, there's all these different silos, and this is the history. Philly has a long history of silos and people not talking to each other and doing all kinds of things. But
what's mine is mine, and what's yours is mine.
You got it. So this barrier has to be overcome, and that's part of what this group is really about. Is really opening up that those walls and that conversation, because we have to really cross a lot of groups here to make this happen. So you talk about insurers, talking about the providers, the Penn Meds, the Jeffersons of the region.
When we're talking about insurers, we're talking about companies where I might go to get personal health care for my family, that type of insurer, correct?
Exactly,
okay.
Right. Independence Blue Cross, for instance, a great example.
Okay.
And so those groups, and then of course you want to tap into the energy of the academics, people from Wharton and Drexel, and who are really thinking about these healthcare and where healthcare is going to go.
Okay.
You've got industry, so we big pharma, turns out this is a hot area for them too, because they're realizing their whole business model has to change, and technology is a really important piece of that. And we can go, we'll spend another 3 shows on talking about why that is. And so, you bring them to the table. We have Siemens and some other big companies out there that are in the region that could be really important for generating a lot of this going on. And then you've got, of course, the entrepreneurial community. So you've got people coming from tech, you've got people coming out of the life science industries with all that know-how. Combine that with our local venture funds, that's what you have to have all come together. And when that comes together, I think then we create the hub. We buy into what Dan Hilferty, CEO of Independence Blue Cross, is his goal, he says, is he wants to make this the Silicon Valley of healthcare
That'd be
IT.
great.
And we totally, our group is completely behind that vision.
Sure.
So what are the organization's goals? Is it to basically fulfill Dan's vision and to give give folks a spot where they can come to the table?
Yeah, and I think what's unique about us is we're completely independent. So we have that same kind of vision. We're going to go about it we want to create that ecosystem, that nurturing environment where when you bring all this together, good things happen. When Atul and I started this, we didn't know what we were going to do.
Right.
It's just like we just thought, well, if we bring all these people in the same room and we start talking about these really important topics, something good's going to happen. And that's how this all got going.
One of my friends in North Carolina used to say, "Can't all that good stuff? It can't all go through the tube without something sticking to the walls."
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
here's. So how big is your distribution list?
Mm-hmm.
How many people are connected to this at this point?
We've got about 500 now.
Wow.
So in a very short period of time, this has really taken off. It took Atul and I by complete surprise. We really tapped into something here, and we hadn't realized when we got going that this was that powerful and important here.
I know you've had a couple of meetings. Can you highlight some of the activities, maybe at one or two of those meetings that you've already had, and who the participants were, and I mean, what could people expect who want to engage with this group? I'm assuming it's an open group, and
yeah. So the way we structure this in terms of membership is it's open. There's currently no membership fees or anything like that. It's supported by sponsors, and we have about a dozen now. From throughout the region, and I can kind of tell you a little bit more about them. But they come from all those different buckets that I
give us an
mentioned.
idea.
Yeah,
give
sure.
us an idea who they
So on the insurer side, we have Independence Blue Cross. I mentioned United Health Group also has sponsored this group. On the venture side and the investor side, we've got great support. We've got Safeguard Scientifics.
They've been a guest on one of your shows, Kimon, I know.
They were.
Okay, and Quaker Partners, who you probably know
Also,
very well.
also a guest on a previous show.
Ben Franklin Technology Partners. We've got Emerald Stage 2 Ventures, who's been a long-time health IT investor. So they've been supporting that industry for a while. And BioAdvance, who historically has been, they came out of tobacco settlement.
Yeah, they grew out of the
Life
greenhouse,
science.
right?
They are now moving into this space as well, and very interested in kind of learning about what kind of entrepreneurial activity is out there. And then we've got Dwayne Morris, a law firm. We've got KPMG. We've got Wharton behind this. Delaware Valley HIMSS, which is the health IT kind of a networking group, and a company called Zivtech, which is an example of a local company that's really pushing hard into the space in an entrepreneurial way.
So what have the venues been? Give us an idea of what's happened at some of these initial meetings.
Yeah, so we've been having the meetings all down in Center City area and West Philly, University City. We've alternated between Wharton or an academic center and sort of an incubator. We try and Elliot Menschik, who's one of the kind of leaders in the health IT space as well locally, great guy, entrepreneur, very successful. He also does some teaching at Penn Med. So he owns and runs Venture Forth, which is an incubator down in the city, and provides space and sort of support for startups with a nice focus on the healthcare space, health IT.
Great.
So we've done some meetings there. We've done some at Penn, as I mentioned, and we've had them at Independence Blue Cross as well.
Well, you have no lack for popularity because, as I mentioned to Atul before we started the show, I tried to register for your upcoming event and was told it was sold out online. So, anyhow.
Okay.
So in terms of topics, what have you covered?
Yeah, so we've tried to hit the big stuff. The first meeting we actually had John Glasser, who's the CEO of Siemens Health Services business, and he does some teaching at Wharton as well, which was the original connection. So what we do is the structure of these meetings is we do about ask the speaker to do about a 15-minute overview talk, very short, but really kind of hit the high points on a topic. And then we actually break out into discussion groups. So there's some content and sort of educational learning from your peers in addition to what you're getting from the speaker. And we have some Q&A and networking around that as well. So it's a combination of things, and that's really the structure of the meeting. So if you come, you'll get networking, some free food and drink, and hopefully you'll learn something.
How do people find out more about this? group. You have a website?
We do. So it's www.phitcircle.org.
Okay.
And let me just tell you, too, some of those topics, because you did ask that. So I mentioned healthcare reform in general. We've talked about the pharmaceutical industry. We've talked about patient engagement. We've talked about mobile apps. You had that question about kind of how is the FDA, so we had a great discussion about that. We've talked about information exchanges, big data, which is kind of a topic you hear thrown around quite a bit, and most recently accountable care.
That's great.
Has the city been supportive of this, City of Philadelphia?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we have started to engage the city, and we've talked to some individuals there who've been very supportive. They really like the idea. I mean,
of making this a hub.
Yeah, and kind of really building on the innovation aspect of it, which is great. So we are actually kind of embarking on trying to work more closely with the city on some initiatives and things where we can bring our the power and the kind of the energy of our group to help address some of the city's needs. And they've been very open to that and discussing.
Excellent.
I think we alluded to earlier that, and we've had a number of guests on the show talk about, maybe a pullback of venture capital investing in the life sciences space, and perhaps a redeploying of that, towards IT generally, and not necessarily just health IT. But I was wondering what you're seeing from the health IT side. Is there a pullback in investment, or are you seeing, money really coming towards health IT?
Yeah, I think it's really, as you noted at the beginning of the show, the trend is clearly there. And I think it has to do, there's a lot of factors. I mean, health reform is just changing everything, because we have to. I mean, we have to bend the cost curve. It's unsustainable. And so there's a recognition that we need tools to address that. And it could be in the form of pharmaceuticals or other things, but IT is one that has a lot of near-term benefits, and it fits the model of most investors. And that's really what we're seeing now is whether it be a venture fund or an individual, the time horizon is shorter, the metrics
cost is less, right?
Much less, less regulatory risk, et cetera. And so I think there's a lot of reasons why that's happening.
We're running a little bit short on time, so I'm
Sure.
going to ask you one more question and ask you to spend maybe 45 seconds to a minute if you can. What are the challenges, if any, that you think need to be met by the Philadelphia region in order to maintain a healthy health IT ecosystem?
Yeah, well, I think you need great people, and we have that. You need those resources. So you need some really strong individuals and a culture of innovation, and I think we have that here. You need customers. You need early places to try this out, and boy, we've got the best. I mean, so we certainly have that.
Who would those customers be?
That's Penn Med.
Okay.
That's Jefferson. It's all these health systems, ARIA, who are in need of these kinds of solutions. We need to really actively, bring them into this whole process. You need places to do this. So, for instance, Drexel now announcing they're going to be building this innovation corridor, and you need money. And again, I kind of point back to Independence Blue Cross, because their leadership's been amazing. They just announced a $50 million fund that's going to be investing in the region.
Great.
And we'd love to see, if we see Comcast and their new building be part of this, and all the other venture funds kind of coming in. I think we've got a real chance to just explode that industry.
Well, I think you're right. We probably could do another 2 or 3 shows on this, but we've run out of time.
Thanks.
So I'd like to thank our special guest this evening, Phil Heifetz, and my co-host, Charlie Huntington. The next guest on Money Matters will be Doug Hepburn. He's a CPA of Hepburn Financial Advisors, and I think a co-member of GP-SEG.
Exactly.
Always has interesting things to say. Thank you for watching this evening, and we will see you again next time.